You're listening to the Unfucking Work podcast for people professionals, leaders, business owners, and anyone wanting to start their own mutiny and unfuck the workplace. A Work Pirates production with your hosts James Eves and Michelle Minikin. Here we go, so a quick intro. Jimmy is the producer and director of Vanishing Women, why experienced women of colour are fleeing corporate. Vanishing Women was born out of 20 years, 14 countries, and 4 continents experience, as well as her first-hand knowledge of what female senior leaders of colour often face in the workplace. Thanks for joining us today, Jimmy. How are you?
Thank you for having me, James and Michelle, and I'm doing really well. Loving the sunshine.
We're loving the cool.
Yes.
After a week of blazing hot, I think it's about 17 degrees here now, so it's like, yay, I can wear a cardigan. I did think about putting socks on this morning, but I didn't in the end. So what is the one thing you do if you could unfuck work? What would that be?
If I could unfuck work, the one thing I've done for myself to help to unfuck work is to stop caring at all, to stop giving one iota about what they think of me, what they think I should do, what they think I should be, what they define success as. To let go of the notion that a manager has any idea what I should do with my life, and also that I, as a manager, have any clue what anybody should do with their lives. And to have the humility to accept we're all trying to figure this out and nobody knows. I also feel like, in a wider sense, a real sense of honesty about the limitations truly of what a job, your job, will be able to give you. I could never promise anybody a CEO role because there's only ever be one CEO in a company. But we dangle that carrot because the concept is that is the only way people will work. If we lie to them that this is the road. But can we dare to believe that it's possible to get people to give their best to you, whatever that best is, without lying that you're going to give them a promotion? Because some people will not want to stay. Absolutely. So then you have to think about them. What else will get them to stay if not the illusion or delusion that everybody somehow, all the 7,000 people that work in this company are somehow going to be CEO one day.
How many of them actually want to be CEO? Let's face it. It's like a lot of hard work.
I think a lot of the conversations, like that next level, is the conversation. So how do we make you ready for the next level versus how do we make the job you're in an amazing job to have? Because the question is, well, you want people who are ambitious, up, who want to keep moving up in the company. That can't work. That's one, not sustainable if everybody wants to move up. And secondly, I'm producing a movie. I was a management consultant for 22 years. I love public speaking, and I'm at some point going to do a one-woman show. There was never really any way in the corporate world, if anybody was honest and actually understood who I was, to keep dangling being a CEO in front of me. Now, I cared what people thought, so I pursued it because that's what you do. But the truth is, they were saying, Ginny, what about, communications? Or what about just, why don't you, I don't know, become a professional corporate mascot? If they had offered me a job to be the company mascot, knowing who I am, that would have been a much better opportunity. So I would still do my full-time boring job doing, process operational excellence for portfolio brownfield projects, blah, 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 yawn. But it would have been fun to, then prance around a big, bear hat.
I was wondering if there was going to be some dressing up involved here. Yes.
Walking up and down the offices, and then going to kids' parties for employee Christmas. At the employee Christmas party, I would have loved to have just been wearing some sort of suit and just greeting the children of the employees. And I say that because it doesn't have to be so, work didn't have to be so linear, but it had to be this PowerPoint presentation and Excel spreadsheet. The other spaces around, there's a lot of notion in large companies, especially, that if you leave, you are a failure. You leave because you couldn't cut it, not because actually I could do more, earn more, have more of an impact, or be freer or be happier leaving. That's not the narrative. When I left my last role, they're like, we knew the work was so hard for you. No, I left because a lot of racist things were said and done, and it was my fault to keep pursuing it. No, my fault to not pursue it. Is my fault because I just couldn't toughen up, as someone said. And it was like, that doesn't matter. The racist stuff that's being said to your face, the things that are being said behind your back, have nothing to do with why people aren't buying into what you're doing. Because I guess they must be the one place in the whole world that doesn't happen.
Yes, the only institution that's
in the whole world, I think so. And I definitely would encourage really anyone like that. Just, I feel if you're that company where you are the only people that have got racism and got sexism, you have it, your leaders are 100% bought in, they're doing all the right things, and you're in England, I believe you should go to Oslo, to the Nobel Foundation, and just collect your prize directly. I am sure it's waiting, just go to reception, they have your names, and they will just go ahead and just give you the prize, and then come and tell us all how it's done. Honestly, I think everybody in the whole world wants to know. So just, if you are that company, please
put your hand up.
Don't be shy. We need to know. Put your hand up, sir. Come up, get your Nobel Prize. I think that and the networks of every channel should clear the airwaves. We want to have these answers. Please tell us how. Or maybe some rehab is needed, and not to judge, because I struggle with, I have a massive issue with overeating. I'm not gonna lie to you about that. And I have had to get some help on that issue. So we all need help in some areas, and there could be some additional help you might need.
No.
Or an exorcism.
An exorcism.
We could do that. I think, you know what? I think more exorcisms could also help unfuck work. And I want to give a caveat, because you may think I'm making fun of Christians. My grandfather's grandfather was one of the founding ministers at the Ebenezer Baptist Church back in Nigeria. My mother's a pastor. I grew up in a lot. My grandfather from my father's side built the church and helped finance the building of the church in his village. So I'm someone I would consider myself a Christian. So when I say this, I'm saying it from an insider, a bit evangelical here, maybe an exorcism, something to release whatever is holding you that makes people be that deluded. That could also, I'm just throwing things out, that being a bit out of the box, there could be something there. If you think that, if you can sense it a bit deluded to think you have all the answers, and you maybe an exorcism could be something. Because I do think for some people, for a lot of us, and I'll say for myself, it was a miracle that got me to let go of this addiction I had to what other people thought about me in the corporate world. And I would not have been making this film if I wasn't able to let go of that.
Yeah, because that's how you were conditioned. As you were brought up to please and do your best and allow other people to have authority over you. And
there was a story growing up as a child I heard, and it was about, they used this to talk about marriage and work. And honestly, I think it's an interesting concept. And it was this lady who had a very difficult husband, and she went to see the wise person in the village. And he said, okay, he can give her a medicine to make her husband more loving to her. But she had to get a whisker from a tiger that lived in a cave. And so she would go to the cave. Stop me if you've heard the story before.
No.
And so she came back like sometime later with the whisker for the wise men. The wise men asked her, how did she get this whisker? And she said, well, it took a long time. She had to, gradually get to know that, gain the tiger's trust, slowly bring out little food for it. And over time, it scratched her a few times. She came back, and through patience and coming back, she finally was able to get close enough to the tiger to take his whisker. And the wise man said to her, that's what you should do with your husband. And, that was a lesson I took. Again, so just be the person that extends the olive branch. This wasn't even an olive branch that goes to that level. You don't meet them halfway. It's to inconvenience myself to look after. So, but here is the story now that I'm in my 40s, that the perspective. That tiger is a wild monster, right? It is not a human being. So basically what you're saying, and if I would be offended if that was an analogy about a wife. Like, what are you saying that I have to approach my husband leader like the person is a wild animal that has no sense of right and wrong to be able to get basic human treatment? That was the answer. I think the second part of that story that we don't hear about is the wise man's wife came in and said, actually, what you need to do is to stab the tiger.
I was thinking she killed the tiger.
Then get the whisker.
Says something about me.
It was like stories like that are said to be so wise, but it sends this message that the answer is that no matter how horrible the person is, we have to keep leaning in. We've got to keep putting ourselves in danger. And hopefully, if we show that we are good enough, we can earn a place to be treated well.
Like a human being.
And let's take that story realistically. The tiger would have probably mauled that woman very early on into that story. There would be no whisker to bring back. He would have been dead.
And, we have to throw ourselves at the at the mercy of these systems and structures. And
I think that causes, so I think so much talent is lost because people, it's not just it affects everything. And we know that I know from my own personal experience that when I've been and I would just say unhappy at work, which I've now realized was stress, anxiety, and depression. It's not just about toughening up and cheering up. There are real life and death consequences of continuing that. And the UK, we do not track suicides attributed to work. It's a statistic that isn't tracked in this country. I think they should. I think that will give us a very, very different conversation.
Yeah.
And if insurance companies could come after employers so they can pay off life insurance policies that are caused by suicide at work, that should be allowed as non-exempted. So if someone can prove it was a work-related suicide, insurance companies should be able to collect from the employer.
There needs to be change happening, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
it would, because I think just not talk about it. And we'll say, well, if you just, we have so much sessions on how we as the people who are going through it need to meet their bosses halfway. And it's not halfway. We're trying to meet them where they're, how do you manage up? And I do like when I have a team in my film, I like the fact that my crew were courteous and polite and treated me with respect, because I was the boss of the production team. I am the boss. But I want to work with them again. And because we're doing a micro budget film, they're not going to become millionaires, at least not the first 2 years. Working with
may take time,
but they're not going to become millionaires doing my projects. So I recognize, just from issue of just needing to, I want them to be happy doing the work. I also am working with artists, And working with artists, I believe you cannot create beautiful art if you're stressed and anxious.
Nope.
And then finally also is, I don't like, just, this is all my own self as a human being, right? This is just how I am as a person.
Mm.
I like being around happy people. And and I think that should work make you happy? Well, it shouldn't make you miserable, hate your life. It shouldn't be a waste of time.
It shouldn't make you so sad that every weekend you just get drunk.
Yes. So I don't want to have those people working with me. And so I have more responsibility as the leader of my company to create that space. It's not 50-50. I cannot assume that they will come to me if they're unhappy. I can't. So I could pay someone or get a volunteer to go and talk to my people and find out what's going on with them if I care. And yes, we do employee surveys. Yeah, okay. And we can tell after decades of doing that, that doesn't work. So using science.
Yes, it's like we keep doing the same thing we've always done.
Yes.
And people are just ticking the box thinking, does it make any difference what I put on this box? Because you're not going to do anything about it.
Yeah. But I think for me, it's the space around, it's not halfway. That's an illusion. It's not a subordinate's responsibility or duty to express where they're struggling. It isn't. It is not their responsibility to be proactive. And the crazy thing about proactivity is that, this is in my experience, and I'd like to know, James and Michelle, what has yours been, is that going into the workplace, we are expected to be proactive when it comes to doing our job. We're expected to be proactive. But in the issue of racism, sexism, and mental health, leaders tend to not have any ability to be proactive.
Absolutely. Well, even that phrase about being proactive, if we're allowed. So we're having to, in so many organizations I've worked in, this is your job. These are your boundaries. You have to stay within those, because we want you to be proactive, but not too proactive. We want you to be proactive within these teeny tiny guidelines. And if you do anything different, then it's a performance management issue.
But when it comes to solving problems and unhappiness, leaders have more latitude to be proactive. I just find they lack the ability. I think senior executives.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
They lack. So then what I hear is, well, we don't know what to do about insert issue because no one talks to us.
Yes,
like,
because
you don't tell us.
You don't listen.
Proactivity, if you're really a senior executive with budget, right, and influence, what would be the proactive answer, right? Go figure it out.
Go and speak to the people.
Yes. Well, they won't talk to us. Again, okay, so
pay for somebody that will talk to the people.
We don't have a budget for paying people. Well, there are things called libraries. And in those
magic things.
I know there are people who sit at desks who, in some cultures, we call librarians. And these people, many of them study library science. I know. And so they understand how to find resources, because in this world, there are also people called scientists who do research. And what they have done for free is they also talk to people about these issues. And they put all these conversations together in what you may call a book or a report or an article.
You're just making it too complicated here now, Jimmy. Let's face
So this
it.
one is like, it's true. Another option is, this is like really revolutionary for leaders. And it's going to blow your mind, right? Because if you don't have a budget, you don't have, because you may not have a budget, you may be a middle manager. People don't want to talk to you about it because they're really unhappy. And I've heard this works in theory.
Okay.
There is something on the internet called Google.
Complicated.
And I've heard that you can ask it questions. I'm just, and so maybe you could try asking it questions about these issues as well. But you know what? It's crazy.
Yeah, there might be some TED Talks as well, if you're really lucky.
You could. I mean, you could find other videos as well from other people. I've heard there are other people on various topics that create videos for free on another thing called YouTube. And they talk about tons of these things. And I think they're even free. But this goes back to proactivity. We would expect as a junior person, you come with some solutions to your boss. I've heard this, you're going to come up with a problem with a few solutions. But when it comes to issues of race, gender, these sexism, sexual harassment, homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, leaders seem to not have the ability to even use YouTube.
YouTube.
I think it is. I mean, I hear about this thing.
Yeah.
People just put up material for free. I mean, and you can search you can actually type in what you're looking for. You know, Islamophobia I can just type that in, and then I see these people have created content talking about it, and I don't have to pay money for this. I mean, what kind of crazy world do we live in?
It's why do you think they don't do that?
Oh, that's the big question.
I know.
I think so. I'm going to take myself an example about a topic that I do not have firsthand experience with. And we'll talk about homosexuality. And I'm a straight heterosexual woman. And I can just choose to not engage with that topic. And my life does not change.
Mm.
I'm a Black woman, so I have a lot already on my plate. But I can just choose not to and just decide it doesn't matter. Or it's bad. But it's not something I have to kind of deal with. I can just switch it off.
Mm.
I accept I wouldn't call myself an ally for the LGBTQ plus community, because I think that there's still a lot more I need to learn and do to earn that title ally. I don't have the track record. I don't have the results to say that I could ever say it.
Mm.
I am learning. So because it's important to me, and part of what has helped me it's been important. It matters, but I am making a concerted effort in terms of my time and my money to educate myself, to be in more spaces, and I am not calling my gay friends and asking them to teach me about stuff, because I have also discovered, YouTube has material and content, and I can pay, and I'd rather pay my money and go somewhere and learn from someone who has decided to make this their work. It can be easy to just ignore it, but I also find it harder as a Black woman to ignore issues. Like, I've been to meetings where an event and a trans person had said that she wanted the language of the meeting switched. And I think I was one or two people of color, and she was the only person who identified as being trans, or they were the only person identified as being trans. And when it was raised, there was this big issue around, do we want to be telling people what to do? So what I was able to do, and it was not much, and I don't think it was at least the least I could do, was throw my support and say, listen, as a Black person, right, I don't think I want to be in a space where I have to defend asking for what I want. And I've been in many of those spaces. This cost us nothing to change the language of this meeting. And I think that the fact that I'm glad we're having a discussion, but I want to be very clear. This sounds very much like what I've experienced. And I don't like the fact that we want to, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that's all I could say. I mean, I felt because we have to now vote and decide what we do. So I could lend my voice and lend at least my weight behind that, or behind that issue. But no one else did. And the room was predominantly white Caucasians in that space. So I think that, you know, I do find, and it maybe in some ways it's harder for me to ignore, because I see the parallels. I see that the same logic you're using for this group, you're going to use it for me. And I've seen that, and it's not just a moment, a comment, a joke that you just say, it's just a joke, can cause hours and days and days and days and weeks of pain. And they take that home to their friends, their family, their loved ones, and pass that pain on. And then what you're doing to one person is affecting a community of people, because you now come and you see, you know, mother gets angry, loses her temper, or becomes withdrawn or unhappy, or eats, or does whatever. So it's just, I think the further you are away from it, the less of a big deal this feels. And if you don't feel it's a big deal, I would say that's because then you don't understand. The only way you could not see it's a big deal is you really don't understand at all. It's like if I was to say, I don't think that, you know, education, I don't think it's important for children to have education. I just don't think it's a big deal. I think we talk too much about it. That's not it's like, it's such a, everyone recognizes that can't, like, why would someone say that? You'd want to understand, why would a human being say that? I don't think that we spend way too much talking about education for children. I don't think it's relevant. You know, humans have been around for over 1 million years. I think, you know, I'm not a scientist, I don't know number, but, you know, they've been around at least over 100 years. Most human beings don't have education. Why are we stressing ourselves on education? We recognize that is so crazy a statement to make. But we look at the lived experiences, and we're still saying, well, I don't need to worry about that. And this goes back to why we're doing the film Vanishing Women. One of the things I hope for the movie is it will increase empathy by letting people hear these stories told by people, not just statistics, but you're hearing a mother talking about how she felt it was better for her family if she commits suicide because of how she's made it feel at work. And so at least then asking a leader at that point, what comes up for you when you hear that now, as a parent, as a human being, as someone who has a mother or knows mothers, or is married or such, even if you're divorced, you know, how would that feel to know that that's what someone who worked for you felt about working for you?
Horrific.
And that's what I'm hoping, at least it brings it back to, this actually does matter. Even if we say it's not a big deal, it's actually has massive ramifications.
Absolutely. Oh, Jimmy, I could keep talking to you all day, and I will at some point when we book our next chat in. Just wanted to say we've gone a little bit over, which is standard for us when we've got somebody who's like, oh, interesting, tell me more. So, James, have you got any final bits, questions?
I think it's almost what you said at the end, when you can humanize, if that's the right term, a statistic, whatever that might be, that I think is when it brings it closer. There's more emotion, there's more attachment to hear someone's story than actually a number that's thrown out by a government or some institution or a company. So I think well, I mean, we're very much looking forward to screening, aren't we? So
yes, that's what we need to get organized.
We will have more information for that for our listeners and fan base. That would be my final reflection, I would think.
Awesome. Well, thank you ever so much for coming on and chatting with us today, and watch this space, because we're hoping to get a screening of the preview, and then when the film is all done and dusted, we'll drag you up to Newcastle, to one of the independent theatres that we have up here, and get a whole bunch of people in so you can talk to them too.
That sounds great. I am so looking forward to that.
Yes, us too. It'd be great to see you and meet you in real life, even though you're all the way down in the south of the country. So, yeah.
Indeed, I know. But you know what? There are also human beings here too.
I know my dad lives down there. It's fine.
No, and let you know it's true. They are people here, not Londoners. I definitely think that. I'm glad that you didn't say London, because London is a different space. But I used to live in London, so I need to stop ragging on London, because I'm no longer there.
You escaped. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. Take care.
Thanks for climbing aboard for this episode. You can find further information in the show notes. If you want to hire or become a work pirate, get started at workpirates.com.